guys? Ming the Merciless 93 here for PokerVIP.com, and we are reviewing some of my play here on Global Poker. We folded our 2-5 of clubs in the big blind on table 2. We are going to be dealt the Queen of Diamonds and the 10 of Spades on table 2. See what sort of activity that brings us to. Looks like we've got a few decent-sized stacks at this table, which is always nice. Any sort of ability to get exponential stack growth is a good thing. We've got a limp and a small raise. I'd like to see myself just fold here. We're out of position. Our hand isn't suited. You know, 3-betting here and then having the 20 big blind limper come over the top really kind of sucks. So if that wasn't a factor, then maybe we get involved a little bit more frequently if his stack was a bit deeper, if our hand was suited. Plenty of variables there allow us to play a hand like that in that spot, but Queen 10 offsuit in the small blind in general is just going to be kind of junk. Big blind is different, suited is different stack size different position, you know, different variables essentially. Here we're just going to re-raise and get it in with our pocket queens against the half stack. And we are up against the delicious King 10. Just need to fade a king on that river. However, that is not going to happen today. We have King Jack offsuit on table 2. We are going to isolate. And with this much equity, there's no reason not to do anything other than shove or call a bet whenever he does decide to shove. We just have an overcard and an open-ended straight draw, and he might have all kinds of random hands here. He can have straight draws, and even if he has a pair, we have good equity. So we're not going to be able to fold that. Looks like we are going to brick that draw. Get our stacks back to full here. I would advise you all to stay with the 100 big blinds on the table. At least, if nothing else, make sure you cover the players who are worse than you at the table. So let's say you're sitting down and you got some guy who you know is just way better than you, and he's got 200 big blinds, and everybody else at the table you know is way worse than you, and they all have 50 big blinds. Well, as long as you have 50 big blinds, you're fine. You know, if that guy is a lot better than you, then the only thing that could happen is he could take advantage of the fact that you guys are playing deep, which is not a situation that you'd like to find yourself in. So always be aware of those types of variables. We got 6-3 of hearts on table 1. King 10 offsuit on table 2. I'd like to see the old isolation raise here, and we do. We pot that up. And it looks like we're going to get a nice isolation raise over here as well with our King 10 offsuit, and we go ahead and raise that. This is a pretty bad board texture on the 3-6 hand. We don't have any equity here whatsoever. He's very likely to have a number of hands that interact here and will not fold. Our fold equity is low, our hand equity is low, and then he makes life easy for us, and he just goes ahead and leads for double pot, so we'll be getting out of dodge there very quickly. Here he makes it a delicious, we get a tasty little 5-1. Not much to do other than just call in that spot. Looks like we're going to hit our straight on the turn. And, you know, when he leads like that, he might have an ace-x combo. He might have 2 pair. I mean, if he has a chop, so be it. If he has a flush draw, we're going to want to raise here. If he has 2 pair, we're going to want to raise here. There's a lot of reasons to raise here, essentially. If we're chopping, okay. If he's on a free roll, we charge him for that. If he's going to call with 2 pair, we're getting value. Not much reason to do anything other than exactly what we did. And I think we can go for value here as well on the river if he has 2 pair. We just want to make our bet relatively small. So I go for a very small 1.3 into 5.2. Gives him the ability to bluff if you would ever like to do something like that with a flush draw, although it's not very likely. You're not going to induce bluffs that frequently. If it ever does happen, it's just kind of like the cherry on top. And, you know, the main idea there is that if he's going to call us with less than a 10, we're going to give him an attractive price. And, you know, if he has a 10, then we're just chopping, so it's kind of whatever. But yeah, a small bet size kind of gets the job done in that spot. You basically just force him to call. No one in these games is going to have the discipline of not calling. And we get 3-bet here by the big blind with no information. Our hand has very low playability. It's not suited, doesn't make straights, doesn't make flushes. Not really the type of a combo we want to get involved with. We just get out of the way. No pride, no worries, you know. We have 8-9 of diamonds, and this is a pretty good spot for us to probably end up folding. A pretty good spot to do. And, I mean, they just don't have that big of a stack, you know? Like, the implied odds go down when your opponents have less money in front of them. And when he makes it 50 cents over that guy, if we make it $1.80, for instance, we have to call Cameron's shove if he shoves. That's not great. And then that guy also only has $7 in his stack, so if he decides to shove, then that sucks. And we're basically trying to, like, peel some fold equity out of these two mid and short stack bros, and our volatility there is going to go through the roof. So it's not that that play is never capable of working, like a 3-bet in that spot, but for the most part, it's something you want to avoid when the stack sizes are so unfavorable for us. Then we got our Jack-5 offsuit. That's going to be a fold. We go ahead and put the 3-bet in with the Ace-8 of diamonds on table 1. I'm good with that. And we have the 5-9 offsuit, going to be a folding combination. Let's see what we got going on here. We got the 4-way pot. Everybody checks around. The Queen 5-3. 2 diamonds. Save your money. Bets $2. He gets called by Obi. That's not a great turn card for either of these gentlemen. Nobody likes to see the flush come in. However, we are blocking a good bit of the value combos on this board with a Jack of diamonds and a 5. Looks like Queen King versus Ace Queen. That'll wrap things up very quickly. 5-7 of spades, we could open this or fold it. If you have weaker players in the blinds, I'm okay with it, especially 5-handed. Otherwise, something you mostly just end up folding, especially if the button ends up being a very good player or if they're competent. Basically, the way that works is the more difficult time you're going to have with the players behind you in position on you, the more you want to just kind of tighten it up a little bit, play a little bit tighter. If that's not going to be the case and you're not going to have a lot of problems with them, then you can get a little bit out of line and open hands like that 5-7 suited. As long as they have some playability, there's nothing wrong with a 1-gapper in an earlier position on occasion. It's not something you're going to be doing very frequently. Again, you're going to be looking to sort of piece those times together. Who's in the blinds? Who's on the button? How aggressive is the table? You know, how many folds am I getting post-flop? The Ace-4 offsuit in the big blind, and it could go either way with this. Since it's going to be 3-way and we are closing the action, we're probably just going to call here, getting over 3-1. But again, it's not something that is a complete necessity, and I wouldn't hate a fold here versus a pot size raise, but mostly we're just going to call. Well, at least I'm assuming we're going to call. And we see a very poor board texture where we are just going to check and give the fuck up. I'm just giving up on this board. No pair, no draw, nothing to do. We're getting out of here. And you could make a case for doing a little something on this turn card, but for the most part, we'd have to double barrel, essentially. And we can still run into Queen X combos that our opponents decided to slow play. Not something we really want to do. We have our King 7 of spades on table 1. Ace 8 offsuit on table 2. Raise that up against Obi. Still not a hand that we want to do too much with. Easily continuation betting the flop. We're out of position. Our hand is vulnerable. We want a big size bet here. He's definitely going to have a ton of hands that interact. And we'll take that down. Always nice to get that fold. With Ace 8 in this spot against Beans and Cameron, I'm fine just checking on a position. Not much of a reason to do much else. We're not even really happy being in this hand. We'll just kind of see what happens on the turn of the river. 9 of diamonds is not going to make anything happen here. We're just going to be giving up with our ace high. Sometimes our ace high is good. 6 high flush draw, we certainly will bet that the majority of the time on this board texture. On a board texture that is more connected, I don't mind taking some check back the flop on low fold equity boards with these types of combos that basically have to double barrel and then give up because you're not going to use this as a bluffing combo on the river. So I prefer to use them as check back double barrels. It kind of blindsides the opponent a little bit where they don't put you on so many obvious draws. But again, it kind of depends on the board texture. That's mainly for a board texture that doesn't offer us a lot of fold equity. And sure, there's plenty of gut shots and ace-x that can call on that board, but it's not super, super connected and wet. It's not like a 7-8 jack, 2-club board, something like that, where there's tons of pairs, tons of draws. We spread, you know, the middle, the bottom, and the top portion of the deck. So you're just getting more board coverage in general. Those middling board textures. Alright, we got pocket tens. Pretty good spot for us with our pocket tens. We're going to go ahead and raise that up on the button. We will be defending if we do get 3-bet. We will not be 4-betting against these chaps here in these games. Not something we want to do very frequently against the old casual opponents. Flop a set, that's not a bad spot. We certainly will be betting, especially on a board texture where they can have all their queen kings and their queen nines and their 8-9s. Plenty of flush draws, or not flush draws, but straight draws out here on a board texture like this. We get called by Obi. Queen 9 gets there, 8-9 makes a pair. You know, it's just going to be a pretty easy double barrel for us. And your bet sizing is going to be about 2/3 pot here, just on your standard. We get called again, and we're looking for a relatively good blank river. That's a pretty good river for us. I think our bet sizing wants to be a little bit on the small side, since they do have a bunch of missed draws here. We're hoping to get value from a top pair type of a combo, given that we block all the 10s. So if he has a 3, we're going to get some action. If he has a jack, we hope to get called. You know, I think your $4 bet is fine, but shoving here is probably going to be a little bit too big of a bet. And it's not like they're always going to fold a jack. It's hard to say exactly what a guy is capable of calling with or what he isn't. You know, if you shove there, maybe you scare him off of a jack. And if you bet $4 there, most of the time he's going to call. And it's not really worthwhile to make a bet size that allows him to bluff over the top or anything, since they're going to happen. That sort of a induction play is just not going to happen that frequently, you know. They're just not all that aggressive for the most part. I mean, we've only seen Obi take an aggressive line maybe once when he 3-bet pre-flop. So it's not something we're really going to be monkeying around with. We got Queen 5 of diamonds. We're going to fold this combo. Cameron puts half of his stack in. I can't even really comment on the play of the little dude, you know. Not much you can do when they got the 30 big blind stack hanging out at the table. Just kind of play accordingly. It does restrict your play a little bit. You can't play as many hands. You don't have as much fold equity. You have to be a little bit more restrictive with your hands that you're choosing pre-flop. Just because of that, they're not going to realize as much equity against a short stack dude, since you can't be calling pre-flop versus his re-raises or whatever. And again, don't get me wrong, if he's just never very aggressive and you have plenty of fold equity against him, then you know it's certainly reasonable to play more hands, obviously. All right, we've got a pot-sized bet in this scenario. Our Queen 4 is going to be the best hand here quite often. I like check raising here for value. We're going to be ahead of a lot of his made hands. You know, that's a very bad river card. The King River, let's talk about this a little bit. So the King River is particularly bad because Queen King gets there, which one of the main hands we're getting value from. It's an overcard, so that if we shove here, he's less likely to call with something like Ace Queen. So if the check raise hands that are, you know, the hands we check raise against that are calling our bet that we're beating are primarily going to be a flush draw, an open-ended straight draw like 10 jack, going to be a queen like ace queen or king queen. You know, those are the types of hands that we're ahead of in this scenario. So on the river, the clubs don't get there. You're not getting called by clubs really. And he could certainly have queen X of clubs, king X of clubs, some other, 5X of clubs, whatever. There's some of that going on. But 10 Jack gets there. That's not a great thing for us. And Queen King gets there, and it makes it less likely that we're going to get called if we shove by Ace Queen. So this is exactly the type of hand you just kind of want to put in our checking range, unfortunately. And, as far as bluff catching goes, if your opponent has a shove on this river, yeah, he might have some straight draws and flush draws, something like a 6-7 or a 7-8, and then club combos that have missed. There is some world where he can have those, but there's so many of these combos that get there. He's not going to shove a queen on the river, so he's going to be very polarized in this spot. And, he definitely has his 10 jacks. And it's just not an amazing hand with our 4, he doesn't really have pocket 4s here. So, we'd rather have a different card than this 4 of spades in our hand if we're going to be bluff catching. Because from an absolute hand strength standpoint, yeah, we have 2 pair, but what's his value range for shoving the river? It's going to be queen, king, sets, 10 jack, and then we're hoping to bluff catch against what? 6-7, 7-8, and 2 club combos that don't include a queen or a king. So ace X of clubs, and it's not like it's always going to be like that. It's not like they're always going to just shove as a bluff with all those combos. And there's not that many combos anyway. Ace 5 of clubs, maybe he plays that differently. Hard to say exactly. But yeah, there's a lot of combos between the 6 combos of king queen, and then all of the set combos that he might play that way. He could still have pocket 9s and pocket 5s. Pocket 4 is not really a thing. 10 jack, obviously 10 jack is a thing. And it plays exactly like this. And if he's playing very loosely, then he might have all the offsuit combos. So kind of the point is that if we're bluff catching this river, and we're check raising the turn and then checking the river to bluff catch, we'd rather do it with a combination that is a little bit better for doing so. And that means that this 4 of spades is not really what we're looking for, since he can have 10 jack and king queen. The queen is reasonable in that it blocks his, his king queen combos and his queen 9 combos, and it also this hand doesn't have any clubs in it, which is a benefit. But overall, with so many 10 jack combos possible and king queen combos, I would rather have something like king jack or king 10 even with no clubs, because that's going to block his straights, and it's still going to block king queen. So if you looked at this river and you said, well, you have to call with either queen 4 or king jack, no clubs, you probably want to choose king jack, since king jack is going to block 10 jack, and then it's also going to block king queen. So this is, the queen 4 blocks king queen, but it doesn't block the straights that are out there or anything like that. So it just, it's slightly better looking at spots like this. And, that's a perfectly reasonable spot to check raise the turn with a gut shot on occasion. So, I could totally see us getting here with something like king 10 or king jack on occasion. Either way, I think we should mostly just be checking this river and then acting accordingly depending on what happens. So if he bets very tiny, we're probably stuck calling. If he shoves, we should be folding. And if he checks back, hopefully we win against some hand that's worse than ours. So I'd like to see myself fold here, even though we're not super excited about it. I think it makes the most sense, given that even though we have, again, 2 pair is strong from a absolute strength standpoint, I don't think it's all that great from a relative strength standpoint, where we'd rather have something blocking the straight and still being able to block his king, queen, and whatnot. And yeah, of course, we get sometimes bluffed off the best hand here, but I think that's okay. That's perfectly fine. It's going to happen sometimes. And again, he would have to have some pretty weird combos calling the turn, like 6-7 or 7-8. Don't really make a lot of sense for him to call the turn with. And then his clubs have to essentially be ace-high clubs. And he's probably not going to be betting. He's probably not going to be shoving with the king of clubs on the river, king X of clubs, or queen X of clubs. So it doesn't make as much sense for him to have any of those draws or any of those pair flush draws in his shoving range. His shoving range is going to be relatively polarized between 2 pairs, sets, straights, and then the occasional club combos that don't include king X of clubs, queen X of clubs, and may or may not include 5X of clubs. So overall, we're not super excited about that. Yeah, but I mean, if you're trying to pick out bluff catchers and spots, just ask yourself, if he's representing X amount of value combos, what is going to be a couple of good cards that are going to block a lot of those value combos? And it's more important to block his value combos when you're bluff catching than it is to have absolute hand strength. So like I said, you say, well, that's 2 pair, but I'd rather just call with 1 pair that blocks a straight. That's definitely in his value range, because he's going to have less value combos, which could give him a few more bluffs. Because it's all about bluff catching. So if you're not blocking any of his value combos, then he has all of his available value combos, which is automatically going to mean that he's going to have less bluffs in general, just because he has more value combos across that spread. Not much we can do here with our 10-7. We could go ahead and c-bet, but the other player in the hand, their whiz-on or whatever, has $1.75, and there's 95 cents in the pot, so we don't want to mess around with that really. And Obi is, of course, relatively loose in position. It is a c-bettable hand because we have a backdoor straight draws and flush draws, so it's not unreasonable, but we're going to opt to pass on that spot here because of the stack size of whiz-on and the looseness of Obi. Here we got an open-ended straight draw on Queen-Jack. Going to go ahead and continuation bet here. Actually, it was just a shove with him having $1.45, which is perfectly fine. Put a man to a decision for all of his chips. That's right. That's what we're in the business of doing. Obi's going to fold. We've got 10-deuce offsuit in the big blind. Not much we can do with this. Just going to be a folding combination. Not much going on with that Queen 8 either. We have pocket 7s. We'll probably be getting it in with whiz-on if they would like to do so. It looks like they've declined the invitation. Certainly going to be raising it up here, blind versus blind. Kind of assume that Obi just calls. He's pretty much called every single time. This is a hand we definitely want a continuation bet here. It's the best hand often. We protect it. If Obi floats us, so be it. We'll go from there. We'll be doing a lot of checking on the turn. Just a spot where you win the pot a lot, you protect your hand's vulnerability, and if you do get called or raised, you have a relatively easy path to the rest of your decisions. In which case you'll be doing a lot of checking on the turn and giving up. King Deuce is going to be a fold, Jack 4 a fold. Five-nine offsuit, going to be a folding combo. Got ace-4 offsuit, which is not going to cut the mustard in this position. If you're in a later position, it's reasonable, the button specifically, and obviously if it's suited, you're going to be raising it from any position. King 8 offsuit in the big blind. Gambling man raises it up, the pot-sized bet. We can defend here because of our stack sizes, but folding here is perfectly reasonable as well. I don't mind if I fold, I don't mind if I defend. I'd probably fold a bit more often than defend, and just defend slightly better. King 10, King 9. It's, the blinds, you definitely want to defend quite a bit, but if your opponents are not going to exploit you, then you don't need to defend as much as people say that you should be defending. You really don't. Sometimes just playing tight is going to make you the most money. At the end of the day, balance is important against good players because they can take advantage of the things that you're doing that aren't balanced. But they need a lot of time playing with you to draw those leaks out or see them, and very often you just make more money by making a better exploitative play in the game that you're in and the players that you're up against. So you have to think about what your opponent's strategy is. What is my opponent's strategy, and then how do I counter that? And if my opponent's balanced, then I'm going to be balanced. And if my opponent's strategy is unbalanced, then I'm going to be as unbalanced as possible against him. Another spot with our King 8 offsuit. Pretty easy fold this time with a re-raise. We've got Ace Queen, so we're going to be raising that up on table 1. See if we can get some action from the gambling man. We get called by Giggle in the big blind. And on this board texture, I'm perfectly fine just checking it back. We have a strong ace high, we have a gut shot, we don't have a heart in our hand. You could continuation bet this board, it's not unreasonable, but from the big blind, he's going to have tons of hands that are defending this board. I'd rather just go ahead and check this down. Same thing here on the turn. I'm not really doing anything for our fold equity. I'm fine just going ahead and checking down our ace high. I can assume that he's checking down worse ace highs as well, that we're just going to beat. And here he's checking down 5 high, which is always nice. Always nice when your opponent's just checking down 5 high and not bluffing you. I'm going to go ahead and call with our ace-9 suited. You could certainly raise that combo out of position as well. In this scenario, we've opted to just call, but I'm fine with a raise with the ace-9 as well. Given that our stack sizes are more reasonable in this scenario, if we still had a player that just had like 10 big blinds or something, it would kind of depend on them. If they're just like trapped every time, then you don't really want to raise this hand, but mostly against a guy who's limping any bit, with 10 big blinds, we definitely just raise and get it in against them with the ace-9. We're going to go ahead and isolate with our 2-5 against the house husband and his half stack. Taking that one down. We bet the turn, and I think that this is a pretty good spot on the river here to check. And the reason why is because that deuce is a very bad card. The types of hands that Beans can have here, he can have a diamond, and yeah, there's some bluffs in that regard, like just one diamond hands, but there's not a ton of those combos. He can have a bigger ace, he can have a flush, he can have a 5, he can have some 2-pair combos that are floating around right now. Overall, we're not going to get called by very many combos here that we are beating. So we're essentially saying that he has ace-6 or ace-7, and that's it, because everything else is a chop or it beats us. Ace-deuce beats us, ace-3, ace-4, ace-5 all beat us, and we're just ahead of ace-6 and ace-7, essentially. So this is one of those spots where it's important to realize that you're not really going to get called by that much, and even if you decide that you don't want to call a bet, checking is still going to be the best play here. It's not that we're afraid of being bluffed or we're afraid that we're going to see a bad bet size and we're not going to interact with it very well. It's just simply that betting doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. Checking makes the most sense, and then we'll just sort of deal with whatever happens when it does. And, if he has a value combo on this board, it's going to be what? It's going to be sets, flushes, all that type of shit. Straights. So we would rather have a different hand or a different combo than a 9. We'd rather have a diamond in our hand. We'd rather have our own straight to check call. But either way, we go ahead and we check here, and he checks back the 5 of diamonds. I'm not sure that he knew that he had a straight. I would guess that he did not know he had a straight. But that's going to be video 1. I'll be back in a little bit and check you guys out in video 2. Hope you've enjoyed this one. And if you guys like this format, let me know. A little bit of review action. Yeah, we'll be right back with part 2.